We're extremely blessed and happy that we have our guest today that can talk to us a little bit more about the space of venture capital and corporate venturing. And of course, very happy to see Jack Crawford again, who we already met last week. And you know that I know you all were very appreciative about him, reaching out into his network and helping us get really interesting guests into the classroom to make the Zoom sessions all the more engaging. Jack, do you quickly want to introduce yourself one more time, maybe for the ones that weren't there last time, and then maybe introduce our guests?
Sure, happy to. Thanks, Christina, and thanks to all the students for making time. My name is Jack Crawford. I'm the founding general partner at Impact Venture Capital. We're a seed and early stage venture fund that invests actively in artificial intelligence companies, oftentimes alongside of corporate venture groups. So there's been quite a rise in corporate venture. And I'm excited today to introduce you to G from Micron and Hijin from SK hynix, two of the most sophisticated corporate venture capitalists in my network. Over the years, they've become key advisors. We've co-invested together and they've become friends. We're all excited about today's session, as clearly evidenced by the fact that both Hijin and I shaved today, so you can see that, by the fact that I'm wearing a jacket, and the fact that G is apparently phoning in from Hawaii.
That's right.
So obviously we're quite excited about today's session. Let me just say that I'm thrilled that we've got a couple of subject matter experts as it relates to corporate venture. In particular, G and Hijin have deep technical backgrounds, but also have complemented that with finance and investing backgrounds. And so to both G and Hijin, my friends and colleagues, welcome to today's program and class.
Thanks for inviting us, Jack.
Thank you very much for having me.
So just, in an effort to provide just a bit more background on each of you, maybe starting G, maybe you could just talk, we met when you were at Dell, working on enterprise software, collaborating with Dell Ventures. We went through the Kauffman Fellows program together, this, sort of 2-year leadership training program for venture capitalists and corporate venture capitalists. And you sort of went from there and did a couple of other interesting things, and that sort of led you to Micron. Maybe you could just take a minute or two and just talk about sort of your career in sort of corporate venture and how it led to the position you're in now.
Absolutely. Would love to. So have about 20 years of experience broadly in the industry, predominantly in the software arena. I have my master's in EE, did an MBA at INSEAD in France. I joined, I've done a mix of things, I would say. I started off at Corning in their fiber optics division. And then this was like, during the 2000, time frame. So saw that downturn. After that, actually had the opportunity to work at a startup leading their product management initiatives. It was really interesting to sort of understand how a startup goes through sort of the process of taking a product to market. And in the course of that journey, had the opportunity to interact with several VCs. And I was very curious about how VCs made their decisions to invest or not. They almost sounded like fortune tellers to some extent. So I was like, how do these guys know what's going to happen in the future, right? So I got really curious. So when I decided to do my MBA, I kind of focused on venture capital and entrepreneurship at INSEAD. So during my time at INSEAD, I had the opportunity to actually intern at 3i in their venture arm. So got to sort of firsthand test out what it feels like. And I really enjoyed the process of working very closely with startup founders, sort of understanding their journey. And I really I felt challenged because every day you're sort of learning about some new technology, some new business model innovation. So it was pretty fascinating. So right after my B School, I decided to join a venture firm. So I actually joined Early Bird Venture Capital based in Munich, Germany. So did that for a couple of years. And I always like to blame my husband on anytime things go wrong. So we had to move back to the US. So I blame that on him. But when we moved back, I really enjoyed the interactions that I had with the startup and wanted to stay connected with the startup ecosystem. So I ended up joining a startup accelerator in Austin, Texas. During that course, a lot of startups would come to me and say, hey, I met this large corporate, put a name, and they would say, I'm curious, what are they really looking for? Are they gonna, steal my IP? Are they looking for business development? Are they looking to potentially acquire? I had not seen an exit cycle, so I was very curious to understand how large corporations thought about acquisition and such. So I jumped into Dell. I joined Dell's strategy and corporate development group. So it gave me an opportunity. Of course, every corporate approaches this very differently, but it was an interesting time at Dell because this was a time frame when they were going through massive rounds of acquisitions. So got to see some firsthand experience on how we thought through, how we put our business case to justify an acquisition, what was the thought process there. So while I was doing the venture program, or while I was being a VC in Germany, I'd heard of the Kauffman Fellows program. So while I was at Dell, I decided to join the program. That's how I met Jack. In fact, Professor Dan was telling me about how you guys are doing the Founder's Dilemma book, and I love the book. We actually did a course. Noam Wasserman actually came and talked to us about the book and stuff like that. Really good, good book. But anyway, so after Dell, when I was in the software division of Dell. Dell decided to spin out its software division to fund the EMC acquisition. I've always wanted to maintain that connection with startups, and I felt like being in a PE-run shop, I wouldn't have the opportunity to do so. So I basically left that division at that time, joined a couple of startups as VP of product, and then joined Micron last year in June. Micron launched a $100 million AI fund, and they were looking for people to help do the investments. So given my past experience working at startups and also having done institutional venture and having had a corporate background as well, I think they found that interesting. So that's what I'm doing now at Micron.
Thanks so much for that, G. One of the things that I found is that many people in the corporate venture world have gone from venture to startup and then sort of ultimately ended up in the corporate venture path, with after a variety of roles. Heejin, on the other hand, basically, you were VP at SK Telecom, all working sort of, I guess, within the SK Telecom and SK hynix family, and sort of migrated internally within one broader corporate environment to the corporate venture aspect of SK hynix, which I think you've now been at for 8 years or more. Can you just talk a little bit about that migration from the early days as a VP of SK Telecom to corporate venture and kind of what led you there?
Sure. I have a bit different path than G had in the past. So I started my career with Vision. It's not Samsung Electronics. It's an importing and exporting company, working as kind of an internal consulting team to over the multiple different businesses. And I did my MBA at the Northwest Kellogg School. After my MBA, I worked for the management consulting firm for several. Do you hear me clearly? I lost you.
Yeah, we hear you very clearly.
We hear you.
Hello? All right, sorry. I thought I lost you. So I worked for the management consulting firm to engage various projects with clients in the different industries. And one of my clients was back then SK Telecom. And I was asked by SK Telecom management team to join to develop the growth strategy for the SK Telecom in 2005. Back then, the biggest mandate, biggest problem for the SK Telecom to face was to globalize the business. 98% of the revenue was coming from the domestic business within telecommunication space. And we saw that the revenue was saturating. So the company was trying to identify new growth engines for the company. So the management team asked me to join SK Telecom to develop the growth strategy for the SK Telecom for the next 5 to 10 years. And my responsibility was then to figure out what we should do in the US. And then, my team developed a growth strategy for the US. And then I moved to Silicon Valley in 2008 to implement that plan. And one of the plan was to set up the corporate venture practice for the SK Telecom. So my first work was to set up the 100 million venture fund for SK Telecom. Mm-hmm. And then I recruited 2 professional fund managers, and I moved on to corp website to identify the M&A opportunity in the digital media, mobile finance, mobile banking space for the SK Telecom. And then in 2012, SK Telecom acquired then hynix. I was part of the post-merger integration team to develop the sales and marketing strategy for the entire company. And with that, joined SK. And I stayed on the marketing side for a few years. And then at the end of the 2014, company decided to have our own venture practice. And our management team asked me to set up the practice and run the practice since then. So that's how I ended up with the corporate venture side. And now I'm managing venture practice for SK hynix to identify the new technologies and conductor space, and look at various technologies and business models in the semiconductor space and adjacent areas such as data center space, automotive space, IoT, anything that will have an impact on SK hynix's main business, which is DRAM and flash, SSD, CMOS image sensors, and a bit of foundry service. And so I'm meeting various startups every day, and that's what excites me a lot.
Thanks so much for that, Heejin. Let me ask you one follow-up question. I mean, you and SK hynix have been a fantastic partner for Impact Venture Capital. I've appreciated the opportunity to share deal flow, to collaborate on co-investments, and just to learn about kind of industry sectors from you. You know, the students have some visibility into corporate venture. You know, they probably think about groups like Google Ventures or Intel Capital, some of the more high-profile sort of active corporate venture groups. When you think about corporate venture from an SK hynix perspective, is this about market insight? Is this about, identifying, a company that you can acquire that may be a new business unit? Is this about, just sort of generating investment returns? Can you just speak briefly about sort of your view on corporate venture capital and the key objectives as it relates to how SK hynix and how you think about things?
Yes, it's the objective of our corporate venturing is a bit of everything that you just mentioned, and I think it's evolving as time goes by. And we are relatively new in the space, still with less than 5 years history in the corporate venture side. But we started this initiative to gather more insights in our ecosystem. We wanted to understand better about what's happening, both from a technology standpoint and a business model standpoint in our semiconductor space, so that we can better prepare for the our future products and identifying new business opportunities. So market insight, that's one thing. And also, we are constantly looking at, technology partnerships and commercial relationships from our venture practices. So we meet new startups that bring unique disruptive technologies that can be applied to our, manufacturing processes or, our product lines. We wanted to develop networking in the space so that we can leverage those assets going forward for our businesses and for our activities and etc.
Yeah, and then I want to ask you the same question, but Heejin, Series A, Series B rounds is a primary focus, and typically kind of $1 to $3 million check size with regard to your investments. Is that about right, or how would you adjust what
that's about right. We are stage agnostic, but as a corporate investor, we want to look at least some level of proof of concepts done.
Yeah.
So we don't just invest in the concept stage, and we mostly invest in Series A through Series C kind of companies. And then later stage opportunities, I introduce those opportunities to our corp dev functions, so that they can make bigger bets and potentially acquire those opportunities.
Yeah, and G, maybe you could comment as well on sort of the goal of corporate venture, but then also maybe briefly touch on areas of focus. I mean, obviously a heavy focus on artificial intelligence, check size, and then how you're collaborating with either corp dev or with the business units in particular, just to kind of round out the description of your current activities at Micron.
Absolutely. So for us, we actually sit within the corporate development organization. But that said, Micron has been doing strategic investments since 2006, I believe. But those investments were, as I said, strategic in nature. So there had to be typically a business unit who sponsored it. There might be some business development engagements, or it was deemed a key area for Micron. And so we wanted to sort of monitor the space and so on. With the $100 million AI fund, the goal is slightly different. I would say we're almost a cross between sort of a financial investor and a corporate investor, because for that fund, we are kind of financials first or return first. And the goal is to understand more about what kind of use cases are getting deployed actively from an AI standpoint, what are the hurdles for deployment and so it's more learning, I would say. And in terms of areas we are focusing on specific to the AI fund, we are looking at startups that are applying AI fundamentally to change the landscape when it comes to healthcare, mobility or automotive, industry 4.0 or manufacturing. We're also looking at ad tech to some extent, and essentially what we're calling core AI. So technologies that are foundational for AI. So this could be hardware accelerators. This could be software that impacts the AI ML pipeline. And broadly speaking, also edge computing, application of AI from an edge perspective. Check sizes, we have written checks anywhere from 2 to 10, but I would say that the sweet spot is more in the 2 to 5 kind of range for us. And for the AI fund, we don't necessarily need any kind of BU sponsorship. So we act more like an independent investor from that standpoint.
Thank you.
And, stage standpoint, similar to Heejin, we don't invest in seed stage companies. There has to be some level of, because we are trying to understand the evolution. We are looking for typically Series A and beyond. Sweet spot, probably Series B.
Yeah. Well, I want to turn it over to Christina because my time is up, but I want to just make one quick comment and then thank you both. The comment is, I've just been amazed at how artificial intelligence, like the early days of the internet, was sort of viewed as a technology, and now it's clear that the internet applies everywhere. Artificial intelligence feels the same way, where it just sort of it could apply potentially to every aspect of a business and to our personal lives. That pattern recognition is really interesting. Globally connected world, massive amounts of content being uploaded onto the internet provide an amazing window for innovations in artificial intelligence. And so that's clearly going to be an area of interest for some of the students, I think, and a career opportunity, I think, for many. Let me just say to the two of you, as I turn it over to Christina, you guys have just been amazing with regard to exchanges of deal flow. It's been fun to collaborate with you on co-investments and looking at due diligence together. You guys have been valuable co-investors, and Heejin, you've been a great LP for our venture fund, and I really appreciate all the support that you provided. So thanks to both of you for time today and for navigating through this fun topic of corporate venture capital with me.
Thank you.
Christina, go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Thanks for the great introduction. I'm sure, we spent the class today talking a little bit about the space of venture capital, and in particular about how new venture funds emerge and what are maybe some innovations in the space of venture capital. And so maybe we can ask you, since we have the experts in the room with us right now, what are the kind of innovations you see in the space of venture capital or maybe corporate venturing that our students should be aware of as they're preparing for going out there into the real world and getting their first jobs?
Okay, I can go first. I think this is going to be an interesting time. There have been lots of corporates who have started becoming very active in the corporate ecosystem. So the key will be to see what happens in this sort of COVID pandemic situation, how much support, ongoing support they're going to receive from their larger corporations to continue the investment efforts. I think there's a lot more non-traditional sources of funding coming into the venture ecosystem. You're seeing the rise of sort of sovereign wealth funds and others. So I think that's an interesting new trend. PE, private equity markets, which traditionally invested much more later in the venture life cycle, I feel are coming in a lot earlier as well. So I think it's an interesting time, broadly speaking, in the venture segment. So yeah.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Hey, Gina, do you have any sense of what might be the most promising innovations in that space right now?
Yes, if we look at the past 5 years, there's a significant growth in the corporate venture activities, and not just in the Silicon Valley, but around. And SK hynix is a bank, and we see very exciting new technologies in not just in the semiconductor space, but in different areas as well. Artificial intelligence is everywhere nowadays. So, we, as SK hynix corporate venture group, we don't, have artificial intelligence as a separate, areas of focus, because, it's meaningless. It's everywhere. So, we, see that artificial intelligence to be applied in many different areas that we couldn't think in the past. For example, we met many startups to apply, artificial intelligence models, techniques to enhance productivity of manufacturing processes. For the semiconductor manufacturing processes, there are, predictive maintenance, vapor scheduling, air circulation management. You name it. So, we see all these, different, innovations and new technologies coming in to, every day of our life.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And G, since you are an expert on Founder's Dilemma, you know that we're dealing a lot with team issues and people problems in early stage startups. And that's what the students have been doing for the whole semester. And so I was wondering if you want to share a little bit, looking at it as an investor, what do you look for in a good founding team? And what are the things that you're always a little wary about, maybe?
I think if I remember right, one of my big takeaways from the Founder's Dilemma book was never do a 50-50 or, a equal split. But that said, what I look for from a founding standpoint is a good mix of not technical strength, but also go-to-market, because I think strong technology is good, but knowing how to tap into the market, understanding really the customer needs and building a product that meets the customer needs is very important. So I'm constantly looking for a team that has that complementary skill set of strong technical background, very strong business acumen, and also potentially someone who can complement them either as an employee or a part of the management teams in terms of go to market and, take it out, test, reiterate, and be out there more than like spending most of the time in development. So that's sort of what I typically look for.
Perfect. And Hijin, I know you also act as an angel investor from time to time. So maybe you have a perfect founder image as well, or maybe a bit of advice for the students of how they should approach an angel investor.
Angel investor, you mean to be angel investor or to get
No, to approach
investment
one
from?
to approach one as a founder. Yeah.
I see. I mean, at that seed stage, mostly that's the stage that angel investor is investing, right? So in seed stage, I think investors are looking for the more of the passion and with combined with unique ideas. And it's all about executions of how actually you can build a company out of those ideas. So we look at whether this management team will be capable of actually realizing those concepts and ideas going forward. There are a lot of obstacles and challenges to be overcome going forward. So I think that's where all the differences are made. And so you show your passions, and also you should show your maturity. Maturity plays a lot in the business area. So I think that's a critical characteristics that you should show and prove to your potential investors at the seed stage.
Mm-hmm. Since both of you are experts on artificial intelligence in particular, maybe there's some of your experience with artificial intelligence in the last couple of years that you want to share with the students. And can you identify any skills that you say our students should pick up right now because they're going to be the most relevant in the next 5 or 10 years? Maybe G, do you want to start? And then I ask Hayden afterwards.
So when you say in the area of artificial intelligence, just want to make sure I got your question right. So you're talking more technical, or are you trying to get a sense from a business standpoint, just to be clear?
So our students are in the business school, so probably they would be most interested in the business standpoint, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit on both ends. I mean, I think
Got it. Yeah. So a couple of thoughts. One is, as Heejin pointed out earlier, AI is kind of, I call it AI wash as well. So yes, AI is everywhere, but if you have to look carefully. A lot of statistical models are now being paraded out as sort of, AI, right? But when you dig deeper and sort of look into what exactly they're doing, it's just like random forest or, advanced statistical models, but they're not necessarily, true sort of machine learning or deep learning type of models out there. So that's one of the things that I look for. So a couple of thoughts as students from a business standpoint, just having AI machine learning 101, not necessarily going into the technology deep dive, but sort of understanding, so what are the different model types out there? What does sort of where is a CNN type of model used? Where is a RNN type of model used? Having some understanding may allow you to sort of, when you're evaluating an idea, might give you a better sense of, what to look for and where the strength.
Can you explain for the students CNN and RNN and?
Sure. So there are different classes. Right? AI is a very broad term, and then you have machine learning, and then you have deep learning. So machine learning is basically mimicking neural network. What's deep learning is essentially a subclass of machine learning, where essentially you have multiple layers of neural network and you're refining the model as it goes through the various layers, right? And then there are other models where it's where this is again an example of supervised learning. And so just to be clear, I don't want to go into like a full on, but these are some of the terms that you will hear a lot when you're talking to AI companies, things like supervised learning, unsupervised learning. So when you're looking at very specific problem set where it's a specific sort of AI application, typically what happens is they tend to be supervised, where you train the model beforehand with data sets, with training data sets. And then unsupervised is where it's kind of learning on the fly, and those are more general purpose AI, as I like to, as they're usually referred to. So having some knowledge of the various terminologies used is very helpful. So you're able to weed out sort of the what is AI wash and what is true AI to some extent. To your point about CNN, that's a very common deep learning network that's used in sort of image recognition, those kind of applications. It's basically convolutional neural network. I would highly recommend, if you have some free time, taking a look at Coursera or other courses where, you know, there are sort of courses out there that you can just try, or even I'm sure you can take an elective class within USC, go sit in on some of these foundational courses just to get a primer on what's AI. And that said, I think applying sort of understanding where is AI used, what is AI actually going to be a true differentiator. If everyone's just saying, oh, I do AI to detect, I don't know, polyps in a certain sort of, how is their model going to be different? Do they have truly differentiating ways? Do they have patents in that area? Understanding sort of the economic and technical moat that the company is creating around that becomes super critical. And there was a recent article, may not be as recent, but I think I read it last month, that Andreessen had posted, which I think is very true from a business model standpoint. The idea was from a software standpoint, the assumption is that AI companies will have very similar metrics to SaaS, but what this blog post was calling out was that AI companies may actually have lesser gross margins than a typical SaaS company because of the amount of compute power and so on that they need to run their models. So I think understanding from a business perspective, what does AI mean? You know, from a technical standpoint, from a business standpoint, what is the revenue implications? All of that, I think, is a good way to sort of combine both the technology aspect and also from a business standpoint, the business aspect of what it means to invest in AI startups.
Christina, one quick point just to simplify the concept and demonstrate an application of what Gia is speaking about. We've invested in a company called Advanced Farm. I've mentioned it to the students before. Effectively, what their system is doing is pattern recognition around when a strawberry is the right size and the right color to be picked. And so artificial intelligence is being used in robotics, in agriculture, to identify the right strawberries, and then it's going down and picking them and putting them in a basket, right? At the same time, we have a company that's focused on high-performance computing in the automotive and robotics space that's looking at the sensors on the outside of an autonomous vehicle. And basically, those sensors are looking for patterns. Is that a ball rolling into the middle of the road? Is that another car? Is that a signal, you know, where the signal light's at? And so it's using that pattern recognition to respond and have the car stop in 60 feet instead of 600 feet, right? And so artificial intelligence is being applied in robotics and autonomous vehicles in a variety of ways. But what Gia is highlighting is that there's underlying technology that you need to understand. And then what happens is ideas are triggered as to where that can be applied. And who would have thought that we would have been talking about AI and robotics in, you know, in the fields, right? And so the point is that it applies everywhere. But you got to have some basic understanding of the core foundational technology and how it can be used and applied to various market opportunities. I hope that's helpful in just simplifying things a little bit.
That's very helpful, both of you. Thank you very much. Good advice for the students on what to pick for next semester. And now that classes are coming up and they can choose it once again. Hee-Jin, do you want to add anything to that, to the level of skills?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it may sound too, you know, textbook-like, but I think it's very important to find out what you are really passionate about. And, you know, whether you want to do, you know, software engineer or the just business person understanding very high level, you know, AI models and etc. I think that's, you know, that will you know, decide which path you want to go going forward. But I think there's no right or wrong answer. But recently I had a chance to talk with one of professors in the academia who spent, you know, more than 30 years to develop, you know, AI models and, you know, all these frameworks. And interesting comments by him was that these AI models and techniques are getting commoditized very fast. And it's, you know, you can do a lot, you know, from open source. So, you know, the recommendation that I brought our management team to seek advice, what kind of capabilities we need to have as a hynix going forward from AI standpoint. His recommendation was to don't hire data scientists or software engineers. Instead, hire good electrical engineers, and then use the open source AI models for them to actually apply AI models with a deep understanding of specific verticals. So that's a different approach you probably want to think about when you approach the AI space.
Yeah, super interesting, Hee-Jin. Thanks for that. That's really helpful. I'm going to open it up to the students. So if you can just raise your virtual hand if you have a questions, but I know Dan is itching to get in and ask his question as well. So Dan, you're going to be first, and then the students, please signal to me who wants to speak up.
Great, thanks. I actually have a career question for you guys, because one thing that students often ask us is, well, how do I break into venture capital or venture investing and so forth? And especially for those students interested in the traditional financial VC model, the response is often discouraging, right? Because there's, at least in the traditional model with the GP heavy kind of venture fund, it's a long track in other kind of directions before you can sort of normally consider sort of entering the traditional financial VC. But with corporate venturing expanding, with corporate venture capital expanding, are there, that seems like an exciting new opportunity for somebody who's 20, 21, 22 to kind of think ahead about, well, I'm interested in entrepreneurship and here's maybe kind of a different route into that world. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of how that's evolving, and if you're kind of interested in corporate venture capital as a 21-year-old, 22-year-old, how do you get more involved? Maybe G, if I could ask you to start, and then Hee-Jin.
I think I'm a little tainted by my former institutional venture experience, so my feedback would be very similar to what you've heard in the past. I think, and I think it's a lot more because having worked at startups as well, my recommendation is always to get some hands-on experience, either at a company or at a startup, for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's great to go in as a VC and have sort of ideas and opinions about another startup and how they're running their business. But I think you develop a lot of empathy when you've actually been in an operator's role, because I call it, a lot of VCs may be good at flyby advice, right? Where you're basically going in and like swooping into every portfolio company of yours, providing advice, and then expecting them to follow through. But what you may not respect is these founders, that is their one and only thing that they're focused on. That's what their passion is. And so I think understanding that they have a lot more at stake and they've spent a lot more time at that problem does not come when you've only done VC. I think you need, maybe it's a little old school, but I feel like having been in an operator's shoes, understanding what sort of pain points they've gone through allows you to relate to them a little better, and then allows you to add sort of your layer of expertise, which could be finance, which could be BD, where you're not trying to solve their problem, but you're trying to complement them. But if you've never been in an operator's role, my worry is always that you may go in and provide some feedback, but that may not be holistic in terms of what the company is looking for. And there's, again, there's no right or wrong answer, right? I've seen a lot of successful VCs who've grown up the rank, but this is just my take.
Yeah, makes sense.
I totally agree with G, and I would highly recommend to start with corporate or other functions to develop your domain expertise, and with many years of experiences. I think that's corporate venturing space is not much different from traditional financial VC firms in terms of what kind of expertise you're looking for. So I think having a domain expertise in with a lot of hands-on experiences that's really important. But if you really want to start with the corporate venturing side, then try to find internship opportunities and develop the relationships with team, and then see not just capturing opportunities there, but trying to understand really what the corporate venturing activities are like. And then you can maybe understand better about what you would face going forward. And then I think that's the way to start.
Perfect. So no shortcuts, but hard work. And are your companies open to internship applications if someone is excited about this?
Not for this year.
Not this
unfortunately.
year, maybe next year. Okay. So we have a few questions. Laura, you're first, and then Ankit, I think you had a question as well.
Thank you guys for coming on the call with us. We really appreciate it. I just had a quick question in terms of the difference between a corporate venture and then like a regular VC, which we have been talking about more so. If I had a startup, why would I come to a corporate venture versus just a traditional VC? Because just in initial thoughts, I would be concerned about the corporate venture actually has the infrastructure to steal your idea and run with it because they have employees and that. So how do you navigate that, and what's the appeal of a corporate venture versus a non-corporate venture?
Hee-Jin, you want to take that first?
Yeah, sure. I think I think it depends on what kind of values you're looking for from investors. So typically speaking, financial investors bring a lot of expertise in the investment side. I mean, how to manage, your company going forward at through the different stages. So, they can give you a lot of advices on the, how to raise money and how to identify the right, resources, and sometimes they help you to connect with right customers, etc. And corporate venture, those are values you can bring to the table, but more specifically, we can bring more of the commercial relationship opportunities, and in the longer term as potential acquirers of the startups. And the perception about the corporate venture activity in the past is exactly what you mentioned. I mean, what if corporate investors steal my ideas and my source codes so that they can have their own businesses. I think that has changed a lot. And as a corporate investor, we clearly understand the IP contamination issues, and so those things are the last thing we would worry about from our corporate investors. So values that you have to look whether specific investors can bring differentiated values to the company or not. That's the basic thing, no matter whether it's corporate investors or financial investors.
Yeah, very similar feedback to Hee-Jin in that, I think Hee-Jin earlier pointed out about sort of manufacturing as an area of sort of expertise for, companies like SK Hynix, and that's true for Micron as well. So when you're talking to a corporate, can they help you refine your product? Can they help you from a commercial standpoint? Can they be your early users of your product in a friendly way because they're also your investors? Those are some of the things that I would look for. In terms of, will they steal my idea? That one thing to keep in mind, in addition to IP contamination issues, as pointed out, is also venture in general is a very people-oriented business. So if I as a corporate screw over a couple of startups, the news is going to spread, right? Startups talk to each other. There's active startup communities and things like that. So you would pretty quickly get blacklisted, and that's not something that most corporates want, and they're very wary of being sued for IP infringement and things like that. So there is a very conscious effort around both reputation and also IP from an IP standpoint. So it's not as much of an issue these days.
Yeah, if I could just add one quick comment. The other thing that, in addition to capital and access to customers, the other thing that I've seen corporate venture groups do for startups is enhance the credibility of the company. Because if this industry specialist, if this industry corporation is now actively engaged in a partnership or is invested or is advising this young company, the rest of the world sort of takes notice and says, wow, if they're interested, then this must be the winner of all these other startups that, that are out there. And so what I've seen is the engagement with corporate venture groups be an accelerant to an entrepreneur's efforts to build their company because of capital, customers, and credibility.
Oh, capital, credibility, and customers. I'm going to remember that for my next class. That's awesome. Thank you, Jack. Ankit, you had a question early in the class today.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you guys so much for coming through. So the question that I had was kind of based on hardware versus software. The discussion that we're having is in terms of venture capital in the hardware space. And one question that I had was, oftentimes with software, you see these really insane multiples, or at least that's what a lot of venture capital firms are looking for, the Airbnb to kind of be that crown jewel in their portfolio. Do you see hardware products as being capable to provide those same kind of like 10x returns? And, if so, what are some things that you think are leading to those returns? Are there certain like technological things that they're doing well, or, any sort of distinguishing factors in that respect?
Again, I'll let Heejin take this because, as I said, even though I'm at Micron, I come more from a software side. I'll follow up. I do have some points of view, but yeah, Heejin, go for it.
Yeah, sure. In general, software companies typically bring more, higher returns on investments. So hardware space, it takes longer time is their company. So, that's why, we see less and less, investors in the, focusing on the hardware space. But this new trend, particularly around the AI, autonomous vehicles, IoT, open up new opportunities for the even for the hardware startups. We saw a lot of accelerator chip companies popping up, and there different requirements to conduct AI workloads, for example. So we see hundreds of startups are developing different ways of computing and manage and storage systems. So that's a new opportunity presented by new trends. But still, for the nature of the hardware business, it takes a longer time to develop and requiring more capitals to get there. So it's an area that not many financial VC firms prefer to invest, but as a corporate like us, in the particularly very relevant to that space, love to buy these new startups in the hardware space. So short answer, it's a bit more difficult space from investment standpoint to bring higher return in a shorter time period. But there are other values that those hardware startups can bring, particularly for the corporate investors.
Mm-hmm.
So a very similar view as Heejin. I think hardware companies have sort of a step function when you're fundamentally altering the architecture. The impact that you have from an economic standpoint can be very huge, but those are not very common. They don't happen a lot. So essentially what happens in that case is there is a lot of initial capital requirements to go build out that capability. So there needs to be an ecosystem that supports that build out and from an ongoing standpoint, right? Because you may not even see any kind of revenues for some time. All you may see is early interest, and it takes time for these startups to get to a product that they can actually take to market. I think software companies, it's easier because what they're doing is optimization of, from a either business model standpoint or optimization from a technology standpoint. So the time to value is a little faster. So you can see returns sooner in a shorter period of time. So it's not that it's impossible. It's just, I think investors who go in the hardware need to understand that it's a long game, and they need to be very careful about picking. And it's also, unfortunately, the industry is also cyclical in terms of, where the trends go back and forth. So.
Super interesting. Thank you very much for both of your insights on that issue. That was something we debated a lot in class today. So I want to take a minute and say thank you for coming by, for giving your time. That was really extremely valuable. I think we should all unmute ourselves and give them a little bit of love.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I really appreciate the time you spent with us.